Coming up on Why Should I Trust You? In part 2 of our 3-part series from the Children's Health Defense Conference in Austin, Texas, we sit down with one of the most influential names in the MAHA movement, Del Bigtree. Within MAHA, he is a singular figure, a longtime ally and advisor to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's an expert communicator, storyteller, and filmmaker with the ability to reach tens of millions worldwide. Say his name and you'll get an earful. To supporters, he's a charismatic fighter taking on the chronic illness crisis who reveals government and corporate corruption. To critics, his name means one thing: dangerous anti-vaccine misinformation. If you're inside MAHA, you know Del well. If you're in the world of traditional public health and medicine, and maybe you've heard his name without ever really listening to him, it's time to change that. And in our estimation, our interview today is a pretty good place to start. What lies ahead is a freewheeling, at times raucous, but somehow still respectful conversation with one of the most important figures in MAHA today. He talks about where MAHA's headed and has some surprising thoughts on where there might be common ground between MAHA and public health. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone.
Yeah, we're back.
We are back from Austin.
What a trip.
We almost didn't make it back. I think a bunch of us got delayed. I think I had like a 6-hour delay. Thank you, government shutdown.
Delayed. My flight was delayed 12 hours.
12
Are you serious?
hours?
Yeah.
Damn. All right. Okay. Did you have maybe a libation while you waited?
I drank a beer with Mark and we ate a pizza.
Oh, that's
The
so
airport.
sweet. Listen, guys, Austin was a trip. First of all, it was just also really good to be with you guys. It was just
Yes.
fun to be together. The Children's Health Defense Conference was really interesting. It was an eye-opening experience, and I'm so glad we went. And yes, it's like those letters, they spark a lot of emotion in people. And hopefully this week with our episodes, we'll start a conversation. But real quick, who are we? I am Brinda Adhikari.
Yeah, I'm Tom Johnson.
I'm Maggie Bartlett.
And I'm Dr. Mark.
Yeah, with the trip to CHD, we were able to be there on the ground, take in the enthusiasm. It was just so many people, everyday people traveling to Austin, which was really stunning. It wasn't, a conference of doctors or activists or organizers. Certainly there were those folks there too, but these were people traveling from all over the world to come.
I noticed that there were there were so many parents, and there were so many stories of people with what they believe are kids who are injured or kids who are sick. And that was like the through line through almost every conversation I had with somebody there was like either they're sick or their kid is sick, and that's why they're at Children's Health Defense,
Yeah, our guest,
I get
Del, said, remember that moment where right at the beginning, he said, stand up if you have a family member that's been injured by a vaccine.
Del did that, yep.
2/3 of this massive room stood up.
Right.
This was community building.
And I made a point to walk, instead of standing at the back or at the edge, I made a point to walk all the way into the middle of the room and sit down at a table where there was just one empty seat. And what I noticed that everybody at those tables around me was highly engaged. They were read in. They knew what they were about to hear. They knew that these people were highly influential and they were there to play.
Yeah. And look, yes, they're vaccines were not popular at this conference. I'm not let's not try to sugarcoat it. It was definitely, there was a lot of anti-vaccine rhetoric. I don't use that phrase often, but I think at this conference, there's really no way around it. That's what it was. At the same time, I think it was really noteworthy that the level of person that was there, from Senators, Rand Paul to Ron Johnson to obviously you got Del Bigtree and these huge names that were there. I think it just is clear that, this particular chapter in particularly Robert F. Kennedy's history with CHD, since he was leader of it for a long time, that these lines are connecting, they're overlapping,
Yeah.
All of this brings us to our conversation with Del Bigtree. Like we said in the intro, he is a huge figure in MAHA, and he's been around this medical freedom movement for decades. And before we play you our conversation, and boy, was it a conversation.
It was a conversation.
It was something, y'all.
It was something.
We wanted to flesh out a little bit more about Del and give you a little context. So Tom, tell us, who is Del Bigtree?
Guess how he got his start, Brenda?
How?
He was a TV producer.
Oh my gosh.
Near and dear to our heart. Yeah, so he got to start as a producer, a daytime talk show called The Doctors. He worked on that for a while, which celebrated the medical field. He worked on some other shows, but then he shifts towards his advocacy work. And the big shift seems to be 2016. And that's when he co-produced a documentary called Vaxxed, From Cover Up to Catastrophe. So you get the gist of what that film is from the title. This film became hugely influential in the medical freedom movement. Many people resonated with this film. And it quite literally went under the radar of traditional public health, medicine, and science. It just, there was a flurry of controversy about it when it first came out, and then it wasn't talked about, but it was spreading. That same year, Bigtree founded the nonprofit Informed Consent Action Network, or ICANN. And on their website, they say their goal is to provide every person with the right to informed consent, saying, quote, "We believe that by holding regulators accountable through our successful legal actions, individuals will become empowered to make truly informed decisions about their own health and the health of their families." And under that umbrella, he founded something called thehighwire.com, which I think started as a show, and now it's a content platform that reaches millions of users. And finally, he's had a big role in politics. He was the communication director for RFK Jr.'s presidential run.
Like Tom said, he is a skilled television producer and a filmmaker. His most recent work is a documentary called An Inconvenient Study. It came out earlier this year, and it has spread throughout this movement. The film positions itself as an investigative documentary that Del Bigtree says is about a large-scale study comparing two big groups that everybody's interested in: vaccinated versus unvaccinated. And that study, because he says the results were inconvenient to mainstream public health assumptions about vaccines being safe, he says that study is now being hidden and suppressed, and the only way to know about it is through his documentary. The film features children and families who they say have been injured by vaccines. Powerful interviews. Del Bigtree tells the story through the lens of those families. He interviews doctors who hold strong anti-vaccine views, and he has conversations that he taped with hidden cameras with the Henry Ford doctor who he says led that research project. Now, the film says that this research showed that the vaccinated children had higher rates of chronic health issues. And again, Del Bigtree's big thesis of the entire documentary is that this research was suppressed because it doesn't fit with the establishment's stance that vaccines are safe and effective.
The Henry Ford Health group has pushed back hard on this film. They say this is, the spread of dangerous disinformation. They say this was a draft research that, that they spiked because the research data and methodology were so flawed that the project didn't pass their internal reviews. And that's why it was stopped. It wasn't suppressed. It was just deeply flawed. And we'll get into all that with Bigtree.
Yeah, I mean, the interview was fascinating. And in my opinion, he did take data that hadn't passed scientific scrutiny or a peer review process, and he put it on the big screen, and look, it worked. I mean, as we look at this film and its claims, I think it's really important to remember that science isn't like a secret database locked away somewhere. It's built on scrutiny, but his film flips that entire idea. He told us in our interview and asked viewers of his film to trust what the broader scientific community can't verify. And that's not really transparency. Quite frankly, it's the opposite of it.
I'll say, having seen it, and again, we do bring this up in the conversation, it's like it is clear that Del Bigtree is a skilled producer and filmmaker. It is a well-made film. I found it, as somebody who's not particularly fluent in a lot of this stuff, I found it quite persuasive. But there were, even for me, without being that knowledgeable about this stuff, it was for me, I felt like there were key omissions that I was really looking forward to talking to him about.
Maggie, I just want to get your take. It's something, we heard a lot at the conference. It's something that, Bigtree talks about. And it's this idea that our vaccines are not safe because they've not been properly tested. And by that, they've not been tested against a placebo group. Just help us unpack that briefly to get our heads around that.
Yeah, it's an interesting approach because basically all of our vaccines have been placebo tested. The current new vaccines can't be tested against a placebo because it would be unethical to do so. We have a reason not to. You can't do the same sort of studies because we have a best alternative, which is whatever the current vaccine is. So if we were to come up with a new measles vaccine, we couldn't ethically compare the new vaccine to unvaccinated or a placebo because we'd be leaving those children completely vulnerable. So what we do is we compare the new one to the currently accepted safe and effective one. Now, if it's a new vaccine like the HPV vaccine, we do go through the placebo trial. But the other study is called an active control study. And that's what we've been doing for any new iterations as we make new vaccines for pathogens that we have something in the bank already.
I will say that this is a point that I want folks in science and public health in general to really engage in because it does come up so much. Even Elizabeth Frost, who, our friend from MAHA, she was on the interview too. And she said that the whole, like, why isn't it tested against a placebo is just such a big question. And I feel like I know it just bugs and irritates so many people in science and they think it's like disinformation and whatever. But the truth is, like, engage, talk about it, explain it really clearly. Yeah. Just don't say it's misinformation. Just say what it is. So thank you, Maggie, for doing that.
Yeah. So a big thesis in the movie is that safety monitoring stops once a drug or vaccine gets approved. And this is very key because the reality is that the safety checks don't stop there. Once a vaccine is approved, the monitoring actually ramps up. It's intense. It's all over the place. There's several databases. Everybody is looking for even the rarest side effects that will show up after the vaccine has been approved and it's being rolled out to millions of people. So this idea that we just stop once a vaccine is approved isn't really the reality for so many of these trials and all these things that happen afterwards. So we get into that with him.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm really glad we said all this. I do want to just point out that, like, we do talk about the study, we do talk about the movie with Del, but I think it was nice to hear it from you guys here because obviously he spent a lot of time thinking about it. So I'm glad that we all got a little chance to reflect on it here too. So let's talk about this interview. So. I feel the need to just give you guys a heads up that it was at the end of like a 14-hour day of this conference. By the time we got to Dell, it was like 6:30 or 7 on a Saturday night, and Austin is like lit at that hour.
Music
man.
City.
It's like, if I'm sure y'all have heard about like live music in Austin, it is not a lie. You don't actually have to look for it. It is everywhere, to the point where it was playing outside of our interview. The vibe was just looser. It was more relaxed. We really didn't go in for like the kill. We didn't go in for an interrogation. Rather, we wanted to hear his thinking on a topic he raised earlier in a talk that day, which is that MAHA as a political force and the work and the influence of the movement as we turn to the upcoming midterm elections. I mean, it's there. It's out there. We wanted him to address it. And yes, of course, the guy talks about vaccines. That's his jam, So yes, we absolutely wanted to talk to him and challenge him. Though, like we said on the show, we're not here to like set up vax, anti-vax debates. We're here to have good, healthy conversations. I mean, it was a ride, you guys. It was a ride. And I will just say that, I am also through this show learning the potential of not just, like good journalism and good conversations, but really the work and the potential coalition building that can come from some of this stuff, like what we are seeing in East Palestine and some other projects that we're working on between people in MAHA and people in public health. And so for me personally, I brought a little bit of that spirit into this conversation too. And I wanted to push him about coalition building. So anyway, let's just get into it. Like I said, Elizabeth Frost from MAHA, Ohio. She came with us on this trip and she sat with us on this interview too. So when we come back, we'll have Del Bigtree. Del Bigtree.
Hello.
Welcome to Why Should I Trust You?
I'm happy to be here.
I just want our audience to know that if you hear any live music in the background, that's because we are recording next to the street and we are in Austin. And those of you who know Austin,
we hired
music town.
We hired a live band for you.
It is a city filled with live music. So just so you know, we didn't deliberately hire a band to play. So look, Del, we all heard you this morning, and I got to say it was really noteworthy. The audience just rose to their feet multiple times. You said this is the most important time in human history. What did you mean when you said that?
I think that when you look at what happened with COVID, it's the first time in the history of the world that a war was waged by every government of the world against the freedom of their people. Every other situation we've ever seen, a world war was one continent against another, or even larger, but parts of the world. This is the first time ever an authoritarian perspective of the world was shared by virtually every government. And they all worked in lockstep together, shared the same exact lies, followed the same exact plan, locking people down, masks that could not stop a particle as small as a coronavirus, saying that the vaccine was 95% effective, mandated that on their citizens, only to find out that it was not that effective. Social distancing, which was a construct that was made up. Tony Fauci admitted that to our Congress, and yet that was carried out all around the world. And so what I think if you look at the politics now, if you look at what's happening in the world, if you look at Europe falling to censorship all over social media, people being arrested in England for complaining about, whether it's racial or not, complaining about their neighborhood, how things are going, marches in their streets, what should or should not be. Freedom of speech is completely under attack. And so I think that America has always been a beacon of light and hope for the world. I think we are the representation of freedom in the world. And even we found ourselves locked down. Our churches were shut down and our bars were kept open. And yet we almost did nothing about it. And so coming out of that, you now have seen the playbook. You now recognize that there is a goal, a world order, if you will, that really wants us under some form of authoritarian control. They want to decide what free speech is. They want to decide what we can and can't say. And we were this close. I believe that had we had a different administration win this election, they were telling us they were going to end misinformation, which means we are going to end free speech. And had that happened, the entire dream of the United States of America would have collapsed. You have no other right on this earth if you don't have a right to speak, if you cannot talk about things. And then I think this globalist perspective would have swept the world. We are holding on by a thread here in America. There are other, people rising up in these nations that are losing. England is screaming. People are in the streets screaming about their freedoms disappearing. France. So it's happening. And that's what I mean. We have never seen a moment where the entire world is on the precipice of losing our last threads of freedom.
I think you were giving a call to action. I think you were saying something that you wanted someone to do something. I think you were talking about the midterms. I think you're talking about 2028. I appreciate what you're saying about censorship in England and everything. But what I heard was you want to win. What are you wanting to win?
Well, I mean, there's a lot I want to win, but in many ways it comes down to, yes, I'm talking about the world, but if we don't win, if America does not hold on, if our values collapse, then it's over. Once you lose your freedom, you'll never get it back. You cannot fight to get back something that you've given away. So I think these elections are very important right now. Obviously, I was director of communications for Robert Kennedy Jr. I was deeply involved in working to get him to the position he's at Health and Human Services. We're watching for the first time issues that have been complained about for decades. Arsenic and lead in our baby food. We knew it was there. Why can't our government do something about it? He did something about it within weeks. We knew that there was chemical petroleum dyes in our food. All of this is poisoning. We are being poisoned by our health agencies that are, absolutely not doing anything to protect us. So on the front of health, we are in a nation that is standing up and saying we still have a vote, we still have a voice, we still can make a difference. But there's a lot of work just on that front that has to be done. Bobby's not going to get this done in a year and a half or 2 years. He needs that entire 4-year term. We need that power that we have in government right now for at least 4 years. This midterm election is massive. It's massively important. If the MAHA movement is going to, actually achieve anything, it can't just just be a one-off. It can't just be one election. We've got to hold the space for the entire 4 years. And I believe at the end of that, then let's tally up. Let's see if we are in a better place.
Even if it means voting out Republicans who aren't aligned with the MAHA agenda.
Look, I think that you have got to make sure that you are running on policies that can win. And I believe the MAHA policies win. I believe the one thing that happens, the MAHA moms came over, and I've been saying this to a lot of news agencies. There's two things that really happened this election that I think really shifted the entire conversation. One was the vote by the youth moving the way they did. I mean, Charlie Kirk, Turning Point did a brilliant job with that. I worked closely with him coming at the end of the election. And then the MAHA movement. So Charlie and Turning Point really moved youth out to vote. And then we had the MAHA moms. We had the people that cared about health and their families really turn out in incredible numbers. I would say the MAHA moms in some way are even more important, because if the youth don't turn out to vote for conservatives and for these issues, then they just don't vote. But when you're moving liberal mothers out of a space that their family's under attack, their parental rights are under attack, their children are being poisoned. When you move them over to vote, it's like getting two votes. You're pulling a vote and you're adding a vote. So it's really going to be critical. And I said today, we've got to go now, and even more than just the people, we've got to start pushing MAHA values, and we've got to start pushing MAHA bills. It's, once we've got to keep this conversation about health, about a government that is supposed to be working for the people, not for the corporate interests. And if we do that, then you get your Republicans, if you get Democrats to sign on. Look, if Democrats will sign on to MAHA values, this shouldn't be partisan, but that's who we need to be, looking at now. And so if we get those bills, I think there's going to be a tidal wave. We saw more medical freedom bills in this last session than we've ever seen in this country, across the country. If we do that now in January, when we start having new legislative seasons, we will, invigorate the MAHA base. We will find those politicians that are aligned with us, and we will get behind them. And I think that we can, continue to sweep and stand for freedom. And I think the Make America Healthy Again, the values of health are the tipping point of freedom. If you do not control what goes into your own body, if you can be forcibly injected with products you have no control over, you cannot consider yourself a free citizen. You have the same exact rights as a farm animal. And that is the case right now with any state that says, through coercion, breaks the Nuremberg Code, you can't go to the school unless you've been vaccinated. You can't go to your job unless you've been vaccinated. That's not freedom, and we cannot let that stand here in this country.
Just thinking about MAHA values and bodily autonomy, that came up a lot today.
Yeah.
Would you be for MAHA carving out a pro-choice position when it comes to abortion in states across the country? Would that fall under bodily autonomy?
I think that, there's where you obviously have, on both sides, there's a hypocrisy to it, right? Is there a freedom of choice, or is there not a freedom of choice? On the liberal side, they say my body, my choice, but they're happy to be injected with vaccines. And then on the conservative side, you don't get the choice to abort a baby, but you should have a choice to other medical choices. This is one of the most complicated issues there is. I think it's smart to stay out of that. I think that that's more of a religious decision. I think that you have to, decide where you're going to be. I think MAHA should try to keep from getting into, sort of I forget what Bobby would call it, like, cultural politics. This is really about your own personal health. But they're complicated issues. You're going to have trouble with that with President Trump in office.
Yeah, but that speaks to that relationship between MAHA and MAGA. It ascended MAHA to the helm of HHS, but there's trade-offs, right? Take Medicaid cuts.
Yeah,
Can't be that wouldn't be a MAHA playbook you'd write up to cut people from Medicaid to save money. That takes people out of having preventive health care by the millions.
Well, first of all, I don't think there's such a thing as preventative health care. I think the entire healthcare system is sick care system.
Sure.
I think it's designed to be there only when you're sick. I think it purports the wrong type of health issues, and ultimately it puts people on drugs before they should be. We're the most drugged nation in the world. We're drugging our kids at a younger and younger age. So I think you need serious reforms to say that this Medicaid system or any part of it is actually doing.
But as the reforms come in, you'd want those people to have access to doctors.
I want access to good doctors.
Yeah, and you'd want people on Medicaid now to have access to good doctors.
I do. I don't think that they do.
Right.
And I think if you're going to be efficient, you're going to be cutting costs in places where we're over-medicating, we're over-prescribing, and then you have a lot of people in the Medicaid system that I think are just bleeding the system, just like we have the same thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with efficiency. I think it's ridiculous to say that any corporation, if you go in as a CEO of a corporation and that corporation is totally underwater, it's totally over budget, is run so inefficiently, and then you go, well, I got the job, I'm going to start trimming the fat. We're going to start working on making sure that this company runs as smooth and cleanly as it possibly can. And then you get attacked for making cuts. I think that's absurd. We're so far over budget. We're putting such a debt upon our children. And then we just keep saying, well, sure, we're efficient, but inefficient, but let's just keep dumping more money on it. That's the answer. I disagree. I don't think that being efficient, I think you could say people are being kicked off Medicaid. I'm not sure that that's the case. I know Dr. Oz personally. That guy cares more about people. He spent more of his career really trying to help people, save people's lives. I do not believe that he would be doing anything if he thought he is taking health care.
I mean, it sounds
away
like
from
you're not
citizens.
trusting the data that says that 11 million people are going to be kicked off.
I don't trust any data at all. I don't trust anything coming from our government.
What do you think about, the government is shut down right now, and the whole thing is hinging on healthcare coverage, insurance. Can it be affordable for 20 million people whose subsidies are about to expire?
Yeah.
And we have a government shutdown for that longer than any other government shutdown in the past. How does that fit into this discussion when health is so important?
It's interesting that you are all seem to be equating health with government. I don't think the government should be the ones in charge of our health. And I think that's the problem. We're supposed to be a nation that allows us to live our lives and to give us guidance. We're not supposed to have the government fix every problem that we have. The one thing it's really, really proven to be terrible at is making us healthy. And so the more it interjects itself in our lives, the sicker and sicker we become. We've gone from 12% chronic illness and disease in the 1980s to now over 54% of our children have chronic disease, and 76% of our adults, as the CDC is now saying, have chronic disease. That means whatever this healthcare system that we are funding, it is making us sicker and sicker and sicker. I don't see it as any kind of solution. And so whether or not we take an Obamacare system, which clearly did not end up making insurance cheap enough, and I think we're talking about a government subsidy that they're wanting to reenact that Joe Biden paid for because the Obamacare couldn't fund itself. It was getting way too expensive. So let's borrow more money from the taxpayers and pour more money into a broken system. And now because Republicans are saying, we're just feeding a broken system. We're not getting healthier. We're getting sicker and sicker. Our hospital systems are a disaster.
It's just tricky because those subsidies are popular with Republicans. But I want to bring in Elizabeth Frost from MAHA Grassroots, because I want to tell you something. It's just like we're talking politics, we're talking Washington, all that stuff. But I want to bring it down to the grassroots here. And I'm sure you, of all people, will say you, Bobby Kennedy, like that really is the heart of the MAHA movement. And Elizabeth, what do you want to ask Del? What do you want him to think about right now?
So I think on the ground, something that has really been, I think, interesting is how from here, where do we go forward? So, there's been shifts in the organizational structure and, we've got, I think, so much ground to cover. In Ohio, we've got House Bill 12 and we're supporting that. I'd love to know, what's your advice?
I don't know what House Bill 12 is.
So House Bill 12 is the Jeff, Dave, and Angie Patient Right to Try Act. It's a state bill in Ohio.
Okay.
Essentially, it gives doctors the freedom to prescribe off-label as long as the patient, the doctor, and the pharmacist are in consent. There's this informed consent component to that. And so when we're looking to support these bills, what's your advice to us? I mean, you are an incredible powerhouse in communication and garnering support. And I feel like we're looking to, at the state level, we're looking to some of our national leaders to, where do we go from here? How do we translate the work that's being done at the national level to the state level?
Well, I mean, just I think anything that you do when you're trying to work in politics and when you're trying to sell a bill, everything needs a good story. I think that's a pretty easy bill to pass. I think if you polled most of America, the right to try, you know, especially when you're talking about people that are either cancer patients, those that are in, you know, have severe illness, AIDS patients, whatever, we've all said it makes absolutely no sense that if you want to take a risk, and you're saying, look, I recognize that that product isn't finished with its safety trial, but I've heard good things about it and everything else I'm trying isn't working. Can I try that trial? Now, remember, the pharmaceutical industry has to protect itself too. If you're trying that drug, but you're not sticking to all the protocols, or you're not, you know, in the controlled environment that they're doing it, they also don't want, if it doesn't work for you, that to weigh into the public opinion of the product. So there's some, you know, issues there that people don't think about. But ultimately, I think that President Trump was the first Trump to really push forward and move right to try. I'm actually kind of surprised you still have to have a bill about that. But I will point out on the issue that I care the most about and really focused on, not care most about, but I am the most focused on it, which is vaccines. What's incredible about this is that, you know, that we have cancer trials, right? And the reason you need to have a right to try is they're in these long-term placebo-based trials that cancer patients can't wait long enough for that trial to be finished. Yet when we talk about vaccines, this is a product that's given to perfectly healthy babies, and they're doing 0 placebo trials at all. There's no wait time. So it's really odd that we care so much about safety that will deny someone that's stage 4 cancer from using this product. I'm sorry, we've got to wait till we prove safety. But a hepatitis B vaccine given to a day 1 old baby had 147 total children in the study, a 5-day safety review, and no placebo group. And that was good enough to say, give it to every baby. And if you don't give it to your baby on day 1 of life, we're going to call Child Protective Services on you. So there's a hypocrisy in how we look at safety trials and whether or not right to try, who should use it. I think that that's part of the debate that I think needs to be brought up.
So you're touching on something I think is incredibly important here, which is how insurance companies incorporate into this. Right. So I have a friend whose mother unfortunately passed away from cancer because her insurance company had denied an experimental drug that was cheaper than a drug that had went through all of those safety testings. So her insurance company had essentially decided we would rather pay more for this than to pay less for this. You know, she didn't make it. And that was an incredibly, I think, influential moment for my best friend, her daughter, who is now a physician assistant. And so when she's looking at patients and she's treating patients and trying to help them find what's best for them, often she finds she's limited by the insurance companies. Could you talk to us a little bit about what do we need from insurance companies?
I mean, I think that's part of the problem with our system. And it's something that we're looking at in many different areas, this sort of third party that's involved in our lives, whether it's purchasing drugs. We don't purchase drugs directly. We have a third party that's jacking up the cost. The insurance is doing the same thing. In fact, I think it's part of the problem with the subsidy that Democrats want right now and are holding our entire, country hostage with, which is they want to hand tons of money to the insurance companies as though the insurance companies have the solution, right? So we got stuck in this hybrid instead of getting to some socialized medical system, which, there's an argument to be made. You look at Canada, it does look like parts of that work. I'm not against these conversations, but we went to this pseudo space where we ended up just handing massive amounts of taxpayer dollars and taking the healthiest among us are now going to pay for things they don't need. They're paying the highest rates. And then we're letting the insurance company decide how this gets doled out. And then they're the ones saying to us, we need more. Sorry, we need more. We need more. But there's really no oversight by our government of how are they spending it? How are they making the decisions they're making? And so we clearly need to reassess how everything's going. And in this world, like even with vaccines, I once got to meet with a CEO at Aetna. And I wanted to say to them, I said, look, if you just did a vaccinated versus unvaccinated study, I believe you would see that your vaccine mandate that you're putting on every doctor, you're judging your doctors based on how many vaccines they're putting in every child, What if you saw that vaccines are making children sicker? It's making you pay for more drugs to keep those kids, autoimmune diseases in check. And she said to me, it wouldn't matter. We receive so much money from the government to vaccinate children that and she said in Texas, we get to run the Medicare program, which means they hand us all the Medicare patients as long as we have an A++ rating in our vaccination levels. So it doesn't matter if it's making kids sicker. We are talking billions of dollars pour into us simply from keeping a high vaccine record, and no one cares about this.
Hang on one second. This is important because you're getting at something. Look, I think it's today at the conference. I think you maybe even called yourself anti-vaccine at some point.
I didn't, but I have no problem being called
I know you
but
don't.
You did say God is an anti-vaxxer.
I did.
Right, but let me say this, because here's the truth. I know you made that movie. I saw it in Inconvenient Study.
Yes.
It's a well-made film. I want to talk to you about it at some point.
Yeah.
There are parts of it I have some questions about, but
Sure.
Here's the bigger point I want to make to you, and this is something we talked about with some other folks. And I don't even know that this is something that you and I disagree with. There's polls that show the MAHA movement is very popular. Mm-hmm. There are issues about it that really resonate with Americans. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you what those issues are. Food.
Yeah.
Environmental toxins.
Yeah.
Guess what is not polling all that well with the American people right now?
I don't know.
Doing something to jeopardize people's access to vaccines. Mm-hmm. So, and that is 66% of MAGA supporters do not want their access to vaccines taken away.
Yeah.
So here's what I want to talk to you about, Del, because I'm not trying to set you up here. I
appreciate these are the types of conversations
I understand. So let me ask you this, which is, I know you love Bobby.
I do.
I know you want what's best for him. I know maybe he'll be president someday. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
The truth is, what do you do with that? What do you do? Because here's one thing I hear a lot from MAHA folks, right? They say this about COVID. They say this about the massive cuts that are happening to the science infrastructure. It's what the people want. It's what the people want. But what if the people want vaccines? What do you say to that?
What if the people want to drink out of gold goblets like they did in Rome and didn't realize that they're poisoning themselves with lead? That's what I would say.
So you don't trust the people?
I don't think the people are educated because the media is totally lying to them. The media is not covering the story and the science isn't being done. And so it's not their fault that they don't know the truth. They have no access to the information. They're being denied information that if they had it, if everyone saw an Inconvenient Study, I do not believe that would be where the polls are at. People would say, oh my God, is that true? There's no placebo trials. Here's what I would like to poll every American and say, would you be okay if every vaccine you give your child never gets tested for safety the way every other drug we take does?
Do you think that's not that you think? Do you think that's open for debate, or do you think it is settled science that the vaccines have not been tested?
That's settled
for
science.
Safety? So nothing about the declarations that vaccines have changed humanity. The fact that
what does that have to do with a placebo trial? Well, you just shifted the goalpost. I didn't say the statement is they've never been tested for safety. They've never been proven to be safe using the gold standard science, which is a placebo-based trial.
Early trials of them did do that.
Not true. No, that's absolutely categorically not true. I proved it. I've won lawsuits against the government that prove that that's not true. You cannot, let me make this perfectly clear. And anytime next week, the next month, 6 months, show me any saline placebo trial of any vaccine that has ever been on the childhood schedule. They've never happened, ever.
But just to answer that, and we don't need to get into all of it, but the science has evolved that we don't need to do a saline placebo trial for every single thing. It is an opinion, but it is a system that has kept society moving. It's changed the death rates of infectious diseases drastically.
No, I think it's way too many confounding issues to make that statement.
If I could jump in, an observation that I have is I think if we're on the Why Should I Trust You podcast,
we sure are.
And I think we are, right? I think that's what people are saying they want in order to be able to trust the vaccine science. And so I struggle.
But you're not saying you would.
I struggle a little bit with the resistance.
But you're for
thing.
people having the choice to get a vaccine. If someone trusts.
So is Robert Kennedy Jr. And I would, that's a really critical issue because, and I want to get into it.
You're talking what Mark just said
if
about.
someone trusts what Mark's
that's
saying,
just
they
not
should be able
true.
to have.
That is
But somebody could
misinformation. Misinformation
but
to
somebody
say
could trust
that there's
that.
ever been.
Someone could trust that.
They have trusted that.
Right.
They've trusted
And
what
they
is
should
a,
still
was
have
a
access to a
scientific
vaccine,
lie.
right? They should.
But no matter what you trust, this is a free country. If you want to, inject live bacteria and viruses and formaldehyde and polysorbate 80 and chopped up aborted fetal DNA and plasmids and all the things that are in vaccines, this is a free country. If that's what you feel like makes your children healthier, so be it. But you do not get to mandate that. You don't get to mandate that process on me, and I don't get to mandate the
You
the
move the
stepping away from
goalposts.
it.
We're not talking about mandates. We're just talking about do they work?
No. Well, no. Back to this point, though. Back to the point of whether or not people want it or they're going to have access to it. Robert Kennedy Jr. only has one goal, really, which is to make sure that these products are as absolutely safe as they can possibly be, and to say that you should have a choice. Having a choice does not take your access away. And I think conflating those two things is what mainstream media is doing, and that's how they're lying.
That's
to
an
the
important
public.
point to clarify.
Yes.
And I appreciate
Del,
that. Yeah.
let me ask you a final question. And they're raging out there. I don't know if y'all are
getting
picking up
louder.
on this. It's like as we're
matching
talking.
I think we should go dancing after
Yeah,
this.
let's all go dancing. Make America Healthy Again. One of the things that I heard Robert Malone say on a MAHA action call was that it is not red, it is not blue. And I thought he was going to then say it's American, but he said it's purple. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Because here's what purple means to me. Purple means there's a moderateness. There's a centrism. There's a feeling that, neither party's really speaking to me right now, but there are central issues that are. And purple is really different than MAGA. Purple is really different than Democrat. Purple is like, look, I agree with y'all on some things. I don't agree with y'all on other things, but will you let me into the tent? And my question for you is, will you let people into the tent who strongly believe in vaccines?
What tent?
Your tent for MAHA, the Make America Healthy Again tent.
All right. Look, this, health is a decision. I absolutely believe that we have freedom in this country to make our own decisions for our own bodies. Absolutely. In fact, I'll go a step further.
Okay.
If you want a vaccine, bring it over here and I'll stick it into you myself because it's a free country. And if you need help, I'm never
You
gonna
heard
get
it
in the way
here,
of that.
folks.
You're saying
Del
they're
never
Bigtree
gonna
is
get in
going to
the way of that.
vaccinate
Well,
your
hold on,
child.
In fact,
So-
I will also say this. I am fighting for the freedom of choice. And if anyone ever took your choice away to vaccinate, I would fight them for that too.
So
But
you
Del, if
are
you're
going to
saying-
also
hold on.
fight.
No.
Okay, Mark, go for it.
If you are saying, and you've said, and we've heard it here, there is no safe and effective vaccine.
Yeah.
You took away my choice by telling me that.
Telling you the truth?
No, that's your opinion, right?
No, I don't think so. I think that science can actually prove this
But
out.
so you are saying to people who aren't following it to the level of detail that you are.
Yes.
Okay. Who are, just paying the bills, living paycheck to paycheck, going to the doctor, want to do the best for their families.
Yeah.
And they are hearing there is no safe and effective vaccine. You think that person has a choice?
Yes.
How?
Yeah, they drink alcohol, don't they? It's not healthy for you. They smoke cigarettes, don't they? They drive cars.
We don't
They
tell
can
you
die
that
driving
those
their
are-
car.
Wait, I think that's
They can
actually a really interesting point.
I'm
You're
making this point.
You're saying that cigarettes are unhealthy, but I don't want you to not be able to have access
Correct.
to cigarettes. So what you're saying is, I don't think vaccines are healthy, but I want you to have access to them.
That's right.
Okay.
What I hear,
I can live with that, Del.
Yeah.
Right, but-
So
but that's
what I hear is that on the front end and the back end, you're saying we need informed consent, correct? You're saying people cannot
That's
truly give
exactly
informed
right.
consent if
That's
they don't
exactly right.
if they haven't at least been proposed.
If the only
risks.
reason you're taking vaccines is because you've never heard about any of the side effects of them, then I'm here to tell you there's side effects. That there is not a single, and let me clarify what that statement means. There's no safe and effective vaccine. There's no vaccine that is safe and effective for every single person that's getting it. Okay? Every vaccine, just like every drug we take, injures and maims and kills people every single year. That's not my opinion. That's written on a warning label that is wrapped around the vaccine, just like it's wrapped around Tylenol, just like it's wrapped around every drug, and you hear the ticker tape at the bottom of every commercial. The fact that you may not want to hear, and that I get this assumption that you believe for some reason that though I'm sure you're aware drugs have side effects,
of course, everything
and people
has a
die
side
from
effect.
drugs. Okay, I don't know why you don't want to hear that vaccines have side effects.
Oh, no, I think we do.
We all agree with
We
that.
all agree that there are vaccine injuries, that people have side effects from
Okay.
vaccine.
And we featured
But
them on our show,
everything
by
is
the way.
a-
Just
is
want you
a-
to know
is
that.
a calculation.
All right.
And,
But-
people do. Informed consent and informed decision-making is not like a new player on the stage. I mean, it has been a premise of how we treat patients, of how you talk to patients.
Yeah.
You start with what this medicine may do for you, what this vaccine may do for you.
Are you a doctor? Just out of curiosity.
I am a physician, yeah.
Okay, and so do you give vaccines?
I mean, not my particular type of doctor that
skin
I am. I'm
cancer
a surgeon, but
Okay, are you aware that doctors are walking through the side effects of vaccines with their patients, that they're getting informed consent? Do you think that that's what's happening? Because it's not.
I think there are definitely situations.
Wait, but Del, I do want to agree with you on this point because I've
Doctors-
gotten vaccines before and I have not been walked through the
Correct.
side effects.
As
And I'm
far
not
as
here to tell
yeah.
you that therefore side effects are completely silenced, but I just recently had a podcast where I don't think that the mainstream public health does openly, truly openly discuss side effects, not just in like a pamphlet. So I want to agree with you on that. Let me just
we don't put them in like the same font as the effectiveness of the vaccine. You don't put the same, it doesn't get the same bold font as the vaccine will prevent you from, a serious illness.
but
it will
yeah.
get, an asterisk, and this is what could happen. And as it should be.
What happens if we discover that a vaccine is actually causing more harm than the disease itself?
Then you would stop giving the vaccine.
How are you going to come to that determination?
they stop giving the oral polio vaccine.
No, how are we going to find out if a vaccine is causing more harm than the disease
There are
itself?
many ways
Post
to do that.
surveillance that would pick that up, but
Post-licensure
you don't
surveillance.
believe that system would work?
Well, no, because they say their system doesn't work. Every time there's a study, VAERS is the major system that we have. Every time a study that's been done on
VAERS
VAERS
is just one of the
shows-
systems.
All right, but it's
not
the
the
most-
main system. No, it's not. VAERS is a system where I could just go and I could just raise my hand and say, look, I think I may have this. Could somebody please investigate it? There's duplicative systems.
Yes.
Databases, there's a common language that every pharmaceutical company in the world uses to score side effects. It is not, VAERS is just one.
Okay. So there's several, and they all are ineffective at determining a problem with the vaccine for the very reason they say. We give vaccines all the time. We give many at one time, and their kids are being vaccinated all the time.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely no way, because of the confounding nature of all the vaccines and how often they're given, to isolate that one of them caused a problem. That's the argument they make, so that in that world, no vaccine could ever be proven to have an issue. What we have, though, is all we have left is what my film is all about. We've got to see, is there a signal? Is there a signal that shows us that vaccines may not be as safe as we think? And that signal can only be found now, since we've skipped all double-blind placebo trials, never had a safety test on a single vaccine. And I don't care if you have a modern way you think you can do that. I disagree, but we could debate that. But the point is all the vaccines on the market didn't use that modern way, use no safety test at all. So now, what we've got to do is we've got to see if there's a signal, because we don't. And I'll say this, I'm not here. I have no voice if we have the healthiest, shiniest kids we've ever seen. If our kids are running around and they're just immaculate and the vaccine program's brilliant at saving lives, but we have the sickest nation of children in the industrialized world. Over 50% of our kids are suffering from chronic disease, mostly autoimmune disease, immune dysregulation. And yet, if you want to do a study, say, is it possible that this one product that is moderating your immune system, that we're not giving 1 time or 10 times or 20 times or 50 times or 72 times, that maybe messing with the immune system is what is causing a disease outbreak that has gone from 12% in the 1980s to now 54% in 2025? We've seen the greatest decline in human health that has ever been recorded in our our children. And yet we want to say, look how successful vaccines are. We didn't do safety tests, but doctors will say, but we've been using them for decades and we know they're safe because we've used them. I would say, no, we have the sickest kids we've ever seen.
Del,
the sickest generation we've ever seen.
Let me tell you something,
Why does
Del.
that not weigh into this equation? And so all we're left with is a retrospective study where we compare vaccinated children to completely unvaccinated children. This is done about five times now. The biggest one is at the center of my movie, Henry Ford Health.
Yep.
In their own database, compared vaccinated to unvaccinated. Here's what's amazing.
18,000 and 1,900 were unvaccinated.
2,000 were unvaccinated. Yeah, right, 1,900.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a pretty small number, I just want to say.
It's bigger than the 147 children in the hepatitis B vaccine that determines safety for every
I
baby
agree with that. And by the way, we featured an episode where we talked about the Hep B birth dose.
Where is our stance here? Because it's actually that's a very large study. It happens to be larger than most vaccine trials have ever been, and it is certainly longer. But to the point, this study shows that the vaccinated are 2.5 times more likely to have a chronic disease, 6 times more likely to have a neurodevelopment disorder, nearly 6 times the rate of autoimmune disease.
I thought it was interesting, though, in the movie. By the way, the movie was fucking well done.
Thank you.
I'm a producer.
Yeah.
It was a really well done movie.
That.
I don't know that we necessarily jive on everything, but as a producer, you shot it nice, you interviewed it nice, all that was great. I think it was really interesting that you did in there notice that there wasn't a correlation between the vaccine and autism in that, which I mean, that's important for you to say out loud, Del, say it.
I'm not here to manipulate science.
I understand, but do you know how that actually, can you say it?
Yeah, the study did not show a correlation between autism and vaccination.
Okay.
This particular study.
Fine. So I want to end here.
Well,
okay?
I know I want to finish this point because it's very important, and I don't get an opportunity. I am so tired of being in podcasts with people that are siding with me, so I'm actually really enjoying this. Will you let me? I am. I'm about to skip this entire dinner. I was supposed to be at 30 minutes ago.
Why should I fucking trust you,
I want to finish this point.
Yeah.
Not only does this study show this very scary signal, it also is now a reproducible science that has happened in every study that's ever compared vaccinated to unvaccinated. And what is shocking is that not a single health agency in the world, not a single medical establishment in the world has ever been able to do a study that compared vaccinated to unvaccinated and showed us what you're saying, which is that the vaccinated are healthier and living longer. That study should be the easiest study to do in the world, and yet it does not exist.
Del, hold on. Yo. I'm about to be Switzerland up in here.
Okay,
here's what I'm going to say. Because here's what I'm going to say. I think
we can't move off of Henry Ford, though. Let me just.
Okay, fine, Mark.
Yes,
Go.
You must have heard. You're looking at things with a lens that's so wide. You must have heard the criticisms.
I have. In fact, I posted them on my website.
Of this Henry. You need to address them here.
I have.
Here.
Sure.
I want you just to address them here.
Okay.
Henry Ford didn't want the study to come out.
Yeah.
Not because the science was flawed.
That's what they're saying. This is their opinion.
This is their opinion, but let's just put it out there because I want to hear what you have to say.
Sure.
The study was not peer reviewed. It was flawed methodology.
Okay.
They said it was a small sample size of the unvaccinated, and that you took, and I genuinely, I'm saying this from a place of good faith. I want to understand.
I've posted all of these issues on the website.
But there's one thing you
about
said.
This debate.
I wish you'd done this better in the movie, Del. I wish you'd done this better in the movie. I saw the whole movie. I am holding Del Bigtree's hand at the moment. I just want you to know that, okay? There was a moment where you were like, I think you said the vax. I was so fucking convinced, I'm for real, but there was this point in the movie where I was like, oh shit, now this is done for me. Where you were like, the vaccinated saw doctors like 7 times, the unvax saw it like once or twice, and you even said the threshold had to be 1 or less. So am I right?
1 or more.
Fine, but it was up to 2 is what we saw. But my point is, if you go to see the doctor more, they're going to diagnose you with more shit.
That's the argument they make.
But isn't that common sense?
I think, isn't it common sense that if you're not going to a doctor, you're not sick?
No.
I
know a lot of people who don't go to the doctor when they're sick.
Well,
they don't like the doctor.
Poor outcomes and all kinds of stuff. But
you'd have to prove the poorer outcomes, and that's going to be very difficult to do. But let's address the point.
Okay.
Let's address that very point. You're right. They are saying that the unvaccinated had fewer doctor's visits. And so what
You
they
said that, by the way.
No, the studies, and they
Vaccinated
test for
kids
this.
had like 7
Yeah.
visits, whereas the unvaccinated
Had
kids
1 or
only
2.
went to the doctor like twice.
Right.
And so
On average.
on average, so
But
the
what
idea
they
is that
also looked at,
of course
I
they
mean,
get diagnosed with
But they
problems.
also looked at all of the unvaccinated kids that did end up in the categories of illness. And if a child had any of those more, intense disease, if they had asthma, if they had any sort of neurodevelopmental disorder, then they showed up to the doctor an average of 4 or 5 times. And so much closer to the vaccine.
You didn't say that in your movie, yo.
Because there's,
That's a really important point.
Huh?
Say it in the movie.
Well, at a certain
The
point, I'm
sequel.
also publishing the study and say, read like the studies
Was
on
it
our
actually?
website, all of it.
Was it? Do we even call this a study? Wasn't this
It's an
internally killed
unpublished
because
study.
it wasn't?
Right.
It didn't meet standards. Like,
Well, look, they
it-
can say whatever standards they want. All I can say is this, that I challenged Marcus Zervos to do a study. Prove me wrong. He did that study. He's not some hack. He's their head of infectious disease at Henry Ford Health. He ran the Moderna trials for the Moderna vaccine for Henry Ford Health. He's one of the top scientists at the WHO. He's traveling the world working on infectious disease. So they want us to believe that he's incapable of doing a proper study. I think that's on them to
Can I
prove
be
that that's
honest?
the
I think
case.
he came off terribly in the
Wait, did
movie.
he
I don't know
give-
why
no.
the fuck he said the shit he said. I don't know if you edited it strongly. I thought he was terrible. Let me just say this, okay? And by that, I'm not trying to say that he was a terrible doctor. I just think he came off terribly in the movie. I was not convinced by him. I made my own decisions about the things that I had questions about. And it wasn't him that convinced me of the facts. It was things that I felt like you omitted that I wished you had left in, which I just told you about. So now you know where I'm coming from. Final thing I want to say, okay? I want you to know that there's so much about the MAHA movement that I really like.
Yeah.
Okay? That
But you don't like safety testing.
I
You're
have
against safety
vaccinated
testing.
both my children. They're in gifted and talented programs. They're healthy as fuck. They're maybe the healthiest people you will ever meet. They're too healthy.
Okay.
Okay, and they're fully vaccinated. MMR, COVID, everything. Okay? No problems with them. They're adorable, delightful.
Okay.
I want to make America healthy again.
Yeah.
I hate the fact that whenever I'm at my hotel that I'm staying at right now, this Residence Inn, all they have are Cheetos. I wish there were apples.
Great.
I want a system where the people of East Palestine, the people in the Gulf Coast and Cancer Alley, that they don't have to breathe in these fucked up toxins. I want that to be your fight, Del.
It is my fight.
No, it's not.
Sure
It's
it is.
vaccines is your fight.
If you watch my show, I talk about all of those things. I talk about chemicals in
Will
food.
you make a movie about food and toxins? Will your next movie be about food and toxins?
When I was on the Doctor's Television show, I was the only one and the first one to bring on Monsanto. I said, would you like to defend the fact that the WHO is now saying that glyphosate causes cancer? It's the second highest rating, probably carcinogenic to human beings. They said, yes, we're going to send Donna Farmer, our head of toxicology. She came onto the show, and I had a debate on the show. I brought in a GMO activist that had written 2 books about Monsanto, and I had that debate. Years later, on the High Wire, I had Brett Wisner on my show to talk about these glyphosate trials that he's winning.
I'm here to tell you.
Hold on,
Okay,
because
go,
you
go,
just
go.
said I only cover one issue, which is not true. Brett Wisner came on my show. I talked about pesticides and herbicides on our crops, which I think are very detrimental to health. And we were talking, and I brought up the fact that I covered this on the doctors.
Sirens.
What he said to me is, Del, you did the Doctor's Television show with Donna Farmer, head of toxicology? Yeah. He's like, Del, that is our number one piece of evidence. Did you know that when we're in these court cases, we show all of the lies that we now have of Donna Farmer saying she knows that it causes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma? They're saying that behind. And then we play your show. We play what she said, saying you could drink it, it's so safe, and the jury gasps, and we win every time. I have been covering every issue. I cover all the ways. The mission statement of my nonprofit Informed Consent Action Network is dedicated to eradicating man-made disease. I hate all of the things that we do to ourselves. I don't drink water with fluoride in it. I try to avoid glyphosate. I try to eat organic everywhere I can. I would love to see government subsidies that makes it so that every child can eat organic. I think it's ridiculous.
Me too. Okay,
that
wait.
Wait,
I
what
fucking
about
agree with
SNAP
that
benefits?
shit right now.
What
I
about
really
SNAP
want government
benefits?
subsidies. I want government subsidies so everybody eats organic.
Okay.
SNAP benefits.
How about the SNAP benefits?
Can I jump?
Yeah, what about
Okay,
that?
wait, Elizabeth,
fact
wait,
that
whoa,
there
yo,
are
yo, 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 yo,
40
yo.
million-
No, I'm gonna stop this right now. Elizabeth Frost from MAHA, Ohio.
So I want to jump in and say, I worked on Bobby's campaign. I have been involved with MAHA, Ohio, since the campaign ended, and Del Bigtree talks about a lot of shit other than vaccines.
Yeah.
But the media loves the soundbite of the really.
But he didn't say
salacious-
it today in the conference.
We're at the Children's Health Defense.
I'm
So, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think
health defense is not children's vaccine defense.
But what about the EPA? Are
So-
you furious
so I
about
think-
what's happening
am.
there?
Wait, let me
sorry.
let
Yeah.
Elizabeth finish this point.
I'd really love to round that out and say, like, when I'm talking to people in public health who are like, dude, I love your energy about glyphosate. I love your energy about food as medicine. Like, I heard that somewhere. And maybe what gets other people in the MAHA movement like fired up is a little different, like just where you find your fire in this. But like, I have to just good faith push back and say, he talks about a lot of shit other than vaccines. Like, but that is not the headline. And I think that that's
All right, I will do a
super
story
important.
about Del Bigtree about anything else other than the vaccines because that's what you talk about.
We
so
can
let's
have you
do it.
on to talk
We will
glyphosate.
talk to you.
I'll talk
We will have you on to
all
talk
day
about
long.
organic food,
Yes.
pesticides. Let's fucking do it,
Yeah,
Del.
I've funded studies. I funded Zen Honeycut moms across America.
She was on our show.
Yeah, I put funding into testing Cheerios and everything, to testing Europe's Cheerios versus our Cheerios, to test organic. Is organic organic? These are things that we've really got to get to the bottom of all these issues. I will say this, there is no singular smoking gun. You know, people will say to me, how do you know autism is caused by vaccines? Or the autoimmune diseases? How do you know it's vaccines and not the fluoride in our water, the pesticides and herbicides sprayed on our crops, the hormones injected into our beef, the PFAS chemicals, the, bisphenols and the plastics? All of those things. We live in a toxic environment. 276 toxins are being found in the umbilical cord of pregnant women. Our children are not being given the same fair shake that our grandparents got. We are bringing them into a very toxic world. But I will say this. It is going to end up being that entire toxic soup that is contributing to the health of our children. But one thing is for sure, whatever the smoking gun or all of them, every single one of these things was said to be safe by the same regulatory agencies, HHS, FDA, CDC. The blood is on their hands. And so if you don't trust them if you don't trust the pesticides that they said were safe, if you don't trust the plastics in your food, if you don't trust the PFAS, I would ask you why you trust them on this one product, vaccines. Why do you think they're any different? It's the same problem. It's the same corruption. It's the same corporate corruption of our regulatory agencies that is finally being cleaned out. And Robert Kennedy Jr. isn't choosing sides. He's saying, let's put vaccines on the table. Let's do studies. Let's put PFAS chemicals on the tables. Let's do studies.
Let's
put
subsidize organic food, Del, and you and I
totally
agree with that.
agree
And you
with
know,
that.
How about just
and
food
you know
food?
what we're gonna do? You're gonna do a story on Highwire about the people of East Palestine
I
and the
have.
shit. No, you're gonna do it now because we
Okay.
are working with the MAHA movement and
you're
people.
not going anywhere.
No, I'm telling you now.
wait.
It is deeper. But here's what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah.
We want to work together with people who are as charismatic and
Yeah.
powerful of speakers as you to make this country healthy again. And if you can meet some of us halfway, it doesn't mean compromising on shit that you are so passionate, man. I
am
fucking love it.
passionate. Thank
I may
you.
not agree with everything, but I love
Yeah,
your passion. I'm
I agree.
learning from
Yeah.
it. But I want you to know that there are things we can work on, even if it doesn't mean everything. So let's do it.
I agree.
Okay,
I was
boom.
just someone sent me, actually a friend from high school is upset that I was on Steve Bannon. And, that this undermines, he doesn't like the things I'm into anyway. I said, look, I'm not on Steve Bannon because I agree with Steve Bannon. I'm on Steve Bannon because he has millions of people and I'm trying to get a message out. Right. And when is it? If Steve Bannon and I agree on one subject, should we not have that conversation? How are we going to be the United States of America if just because we disagree on issues, we cannot talk? We're supposed to find where we do
We may
agree
disagree on
and make a
vaccines and we
difference
can
there.
still work together on stuff is
Agreed.
what you're saying.
I'm not going to hold it against you. And again, if you want a vaccine, bring it over here. I'll help inject it into
All right, Del
All right?
Bigtree is going to give me my flu shot. Hey, I want to thank Del Bigtree for joining us on Why Should I Trust You? Listen, I know that like conversations like this can, it can sometimes get uncomfortable. I want you to know that we all had a really
I
good
love
time.
this, by the way. I'll do this every day and Sunday.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that was our interview with Del Bigtree. I am sure you have thoughts. Please do share them at questions@whyshoulditrustyou.net. Please send us a rate, like, review. We're going to have another episode, part 3 of 3, dropping this week. That's also going to be really special. So stay tuned for that. I am Brinda Adhikari. He is Tom Johnson. That was Dr. Mark, and she is Maggie Bartlett. That was Del Bigtree coming at you from Austin. And we will see you right back here on Thursday.